The envelope sat unopened on my lap while 30 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Dad's 60th birthday party had transformed our usually cozy living room into an overcrowded exhibition space, with me as the main attraction. "Go on, open it," Dad commanded from his leather armchair, his signature smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The same smirk he wore when closing million-dollar deals at Kumar Technologies, the software company he'd built from scratch 30 years ago. I knew that smirk. It usually preceded something cruel. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The heavy cream paper inside bore the company letterhead I'd seen thousands of times growing up. My eyes scanned the document, then widened. This has to be a mistake," I whispered. Dad's smirk widened. "Read it out loud, Priya. Let everyone hear what my biggest disappointment has achieved." The word, disappointment, hung in the air like poison. It wasn't the first time he'd called me that, but it was the first time he'd done it in front of everyone. My aunts, uncles, cousins, his business partners, even my mother who stood frozen by the drinks table. I cleared my throat. "This document certifies the transfer of 51% ownership shares of Kumar Technologies to Priya Kumar, effective immediately." The room erupted. Aunt Mina's wine glass shattered on the floor. Uncle Raj started shouting something about family legacy. My younger brother Arun stormed out, slamming the door so hard the family photos rattled on the walls. But Dad just sat there, that smirk never leaving his face. "Happy birthday to me," he said softly. "I've just given away my life's work to the daughter who chose art school over business school. The girl who'd rather paint pretty pictures than learn about profit margins." He leaned forward. "The daughter who's going to watch everything I built crumble in her incapable hands." My mother finally moved, taking a step toward him. "Rajesh, what have you done?" "What I had to do, Anjali." He stood up, towering over everyone as he always had. "Sometimes the only way to teach a lesson is through consequences." I looked down at the paper again, my art-stained fingers leaving slight smudges on its pristine surface. The longer I stared at it, the more certain I became. This wasn't just a birthday surprise. This was a declaration of war. The next morning I stood outside Kumar Technologies' glass headquarters, gripping my old student ID badge like a shield. The security guard, who'd known me since I was a teenager running through these halls with sketches, now eyed me with uncertainty. "Ms. Kumar, we weren't informed." "Check the system," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I'm listed as majority shareholder now." 3 phone calls and 15 uncomfortable minutes later, I was riding the elevator to the top floor. My floral dress and paint-splattered boots stood in stark contrast to the sharp suits hurrying past. Each ping of the elevator felt like a countdown to disaster. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 12 men and women in impeccable business attire stared at me as if I were an alien who'd crashed their morning meeting. At the head of the table sat Dad, looking immaculate as always in his charcoal suit. "Ah, the artist arrives," he announced. "Taking a break from your little gallery to grace us with your presence?" I'd spent the entire night reviewing company documents Mom had secretly kept over the years. "Actually, I'm here about the Singapore merger." Dad's smirk faltered for a split second. "The one you're planning to announce next week," I continued, pulling out my tablet. "The one that would effectively move our main operations overseas and lay off 40% of our local workforce." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You've been going through confidential documents," Dad said, his voice dangerously low. "Documents I have every right to review as majority shareholder." My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Did you know many of those employees you're planning to lay off have been here since the beginning? Like Mrs. Patel from accounting, who used to bring me samosas when I'd visit after school. Or Mr. Chin from IT, who taught me how to code when I was 12. Business isn't about sentiment, Priya. Something you'd know if I'd what? Followed your plan for my life." I pulled up a series of drawings on my tablet and projected them onto the wall screen. "These are concept designs I created last year. A new interface system that could streamline our current operations without laying off a single person." The board members leaned forward, murmuring among themselves. "You think some pretty drawings can save a company?" Dad scoffed, but I caught the hint of uncertainty in his voice. "No," I replied, clicking to the next slide. "But combining art with technology can revolutionize one. Something you taught me yourself, remember?" before you decided my path wasn't good enough for your legacy. For the first time in my life I saw my father speechless. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't just about proving him wrong. This was about proving myself right. 3 months later, the Kumar Technologies lobby featured a new installation. A massive digital art piece that responded to employee movements, creating ever-changing patterns of color and light. It was my first official project as CEO. A statement that this wasn't the same company anymore. It's absolutely hideous, Dad declared during one of his unexpected visits. He still kept his office down the hall, though he hadn't spoken directly to me since the board meeting. You're turning a respected tech company into some sort of carnival. I continued typing on my laptop, not looking up. The employees love it. Productivity is up 15% since installation. Coincidence? Like how our stock price coincidentally rose 20% after we announced the new interface design? I finally met his eyes. Or how client satisfaction coincidentally increased when we integrated visual storytelling into our product presentations? He turned to leave, then paused. Your brother still won't speak to me. Can you blame him? You used both of us as pawns in your game. I closed my laptop. Though I suppose I should thank you. Without your birthday gift, I might never have discovered that business and art aren't mutually exclusive. Is that what you think this was about? A lesson in business diversity? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I gave you those shares because I knew you'd fail spectacularly. Instead, he gestured around the office, which now featured collaborative spaces filled with both computers and creative tools. Instead, I proved that everything you taught me had value, even the parts you thought were worthless. I stood up, straightening the blazer I wore over my paint-stained jeans. You know what the real irony is, Dad? Your biggest disappointment turned out to be your own inability to see beyond your narrow definition of success. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Pride? Regret? Before I could decide, his phone buzzed. The Singapore team is waiting for your presentation, I reminded him. The one about implementing our new hybrid approach in their market. He nodded stiffly and turned to leave again. Dad. I called after him. Happy early birthday. I got you something. I held out a small canvas. It's a painting of the original Kumar Technologies building, where it all started. He took it, his fingers trembling slightly. You always did have a good memory for details. I learned from the best. I smiled. Even when the best was at his worst. As he walked away, clutching the painting, I noticed his shoulders were slightly less rigid than before. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. One where disappointment could transform into unexpected triumph, and where the lines between art and business blurred into something beautifully unprecedented. 1 year after Dad's fateful birthday party, I stood at a podium facing a packed auditorium at the annual Kumar Technologies Global Summit. The company's evolution had made headlines in the tech world, and everyone wanted to know how an art school graduate had turned a traditional software company into a pioneer of creative tech integration. Last year, my father called me his biggest disappointment. I began, watching Dad shift uncomfortably in his front row seat. Today, I want to thank him for that. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Because disappointment, I've learned, is often just innovation in disguise. When you disappoint someone's expectations, you're really just refusing to be confined by them. I clicked to the next slide, showing our yearly results. Our profits have doubled. Our employee retention rate is at an all-time high. And our new creative tech division has 3 revolutionary patents pending. From the corner of my eye, I saw my brother Arun slip into the auditorium. We hadn't spoken much since that night, his resentment at being passed over still raw. But he'd started attending company meetings recently, watching silently from the back. But the real transformation wasn't in our numbers, I continued. It was in our perspective. We stopped seeing art and technology as opponents and started seeing them as partners. Just like family and business don't have to be enemies. I took a deep breath. Which is why I'm announcing 2 new appointments today. First, I'd like to welcome Arun Kumar as our new Chief Operating Officer. Arun's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. Dad turned in his seat to look at him. His business degree and traditional approach will balance my more unconventional methods, I said, smiling at my brother. And second, I'm creating a new position, Chief Innovation Advisor. Dad, I hope you'll accept the role. We could use your experience, tempered with a fresh perspective. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Dad stood slowly, straightening his tie. For a moment I thought he might walk out. Instead he did something I hadn't seen in years. He smiled. Not a smirk, but a genuine smile. Well, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet room, it seems my biggest disappointment has become my greatest pride. He turned to face the audience. And yes, I accept the position. Someone needs to keep these creative types grounded in reality. Later that evening, as we sat in the office, Dad, Arun and I, sharing a bottle of scotch, Dad pulled out the painting I'd given him. I had it hung in the lobby, he said. Next to that ridiculous light installation of yours. Perfect placement, I replied. The past and future of Kumar Technologies, side by side. Arun raised his glass. To disappointments that turn into discoveries. Dad clinked his glass against ours. And to children who teach their parents that success has many faces. As we looked out over the city skyline, I realized that sometimes the greatest achievements come not from meeting expectations, but from shattering them completely. And sometimes, just sometimes, what breaks can be rebuilt into something far stronger than before. 5 years after the birthday incident, as we now jokingly called it, Kumar Technologies had become a case study at leading business schools. But it wasn't our profits or innovations they were most interested in. It was our family dynamics. I sat in my office, now decorated with both financial reports and original artwork, reviewing an article in Forbes, The Kumar Revolution, How 3 Generations Redefined Tech Leadership. 3 generations because my daughter Mira, just turning 4, had already become the company's unofficial mascot. She'd inherited both her grandfather's business instincts and my artistic soul, turning board meetings into impromptu art sessions and teaching CEOs how to finger paint during negotiations. She's in the server room again, Arun announced, walking in with my paint-covered daughter perched on his shoulders. Teaching the IT team about color theory. Mrs. Patel said my colors made the numbers dance, Mira declared proudly. Dad followed them in, his hair now fully silver but his eyes sharper than ever. She's disrupting workflow, he grumbled, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. The painting I'd given him was visible through my office window, now centerpiece of a historical company timeline in the lobby. Like mother, like daughter, Mom added, joining our impromptu family gathering. She'd taken on a role as well, heading our new employee wellness program. Though I must say, Priya, she's starting younger than you did. I watched as Mira climbed down from Arun's shoulders and headed straight for my tablet, where she began doodling on a complex system diagram. Instead of stopping her, I observed. Look, Nana, she called to Dad. I made the boring lines pretty. Dad leaned over her shoulder, his expression thoughtful. You know, those color codes could actually help categorize data streams more efficiently. He looked at me. Your daughter might be onto something. Like mother, like daughter, Arun echoed, grinning. I picked up Mira, settling her on my lap as we all gathered around the tablet. Maybe that's the real legacy of Kumar Technologies, I mused. Not just merging art and technology but merging generations. Learning from each other. Speaking of legacies, Dad cleared his throat, suddenly serious. My 65th birthday is coming up. The room fell silent. Birthday announcements in our family carried weight now. I was thinking, he continued, perhaps it's time for another transfer of shares. My heart skipped a beat, but before I could speak he smiled. To a trust, he clarified. For Mira. When she's ready. Whether she wants to be an artist, a CEO, or both. He touched the tablet screen where Myra's colorful doodles intersected with complex coding. Because sometimes the best future is one we couldn't have planned. Mira looked up at him with paint-smudged cheeks. Can I make the trust papers pretty too, Nana? We all laughed, the sound echoing through the office that had seen so many transformations. From disappointment to pride, from division to unity, from rigid expectations to endless possibilities. You know, Mom said softly, some people spend their whole lives trying to prove their parents wrong. But you, Priya, you proved your father right in ways he never expected. Dad put his hand on my shoulder, the gesture speaking volumes. The best kind of disappointment, he said, is the kind that disappoints your worst expectations. Looking around at my family, My brother who'd become my strongest ally, my father who'd learned to embrace change, my mother who'd helped bridge our gaps, and my daughter who represented all our possibilities. I realized that success wasn't about proving anything. It was about growing together even when growing meant growing apart first. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I found myself alone in the office with an unexpected visitor. My old art professor, Dr. Chin, who'd been invited to consult on our latest digital art integration project. "I remember when you were convinced you had to choose," she said, examining the mix of paintings and prototypes scattered across my desk. "Art or business? Your passion or your father's legacy?" I picked up a recent photo. Dad teaching Mira how to use a 3D printer to create her artwork. Funny how life works out. Now he's the one telling investors that creativity is our competitive edge. "And your brother?" "Arun's launching a program next month," I smiled. "Teaching business fundamentals to art students. Says he wants them to know they don't have to choose either." Dr. Chin nodded at the Forbes magazine on my desk. "You've created quite the ripple effect in the tech world. Other companies are following your model." "That's not even the biggest change," I said, pulling out an old birthday card. Inside was the first sketch I'd ever made of Kumar Technologies building, drawn when I was Myra's age. Dad had kept it all these years tucked away in his desk. "The real change," I continued, "is that now when someone says, 'I'm disappointed in you,' we hear it differently at Kumar Technologies. We hear, 'Show me something I never imagined possible.'" Outside my window, the city lights blended with the reflection of our lobby's interactive art installation, creating a symphony of color and shadow. Just like the company itself, a blend of seemingly opposing forces creating something entirely new.